Hi, welcome to episode 13 of Conversations with Nilu. I'm getting a little bit better at being consistent, and again, my aim is always to try to just put out as many episodes as I can. I know in the past I did express the intention to create 2-hour podcasts. However, I'm not quite there yet with my work-life balance, so I think at least from the people that listen to my podcasts, I heard that they prefer for these to be short excerpts of episodes as it allows for them to digest the information much easier, and 15-minute is seems to be quite convenient for at least my listeners. So I'm going to jump into some of the subjects, concepts that I was hoping to share on this episode. And lately, I have been really getting interested in Jungian psychology and just understanding more about Carl Jung, who he was, what led him to this path of all the wonderful ideas and truths that he discovered along his life's journey. And if for some of you who don't know who Carl Jung is, he's a renowned analytical psychologist. I think he's the father of analytical psychology, if I'm not mistaken. And he just carried on Freud's work, and some of his ideologies and concepts are really getting popular, at least in our era, or at least maybe I'm just catching up to it. But I just find all his ideas fascinating. I am trying to understand and learn more about dream journaling, anima animus, the concept of shadow, how that comes into play into the individual and also the collective psyche, and just general terms like the collective conscious, the collective unconscious, and how that relates to the individual conscious and unconscious. A lot of the mythology that currently exists in our times, just from all the symbols in every religion, from that to going back to some of the old ideas such as the Greeks, gods and goddesses. All of these I find are very interesting ideas because Jung really takes these concepts and makes sense of them, how they do have a deeper meaning and connection to the human psyche and to the collective human species in general as generations have progressed. So it's fascinating to me. And I just enjoy learning about these concepts. It's just turning into a hobby for me. I absolutely love it. It brings me joy to be able to make sense of my own mind and to also be able to make sense of the people around me, because I think what I like about it is it allows for me to come from a place of understanding where not only can I show compassion to myself, but also compassion to my fellow humans to the best of my ability. And I say that because, every day we encounter people, even people we truly love, that can push our buttons. But I think we're all on this journey to keep or stay connected to our higher selves and to always respond with the connection to our higher selves. I think as long as we are all striving towards that and doing the best that we can with what we know, bless us all for making that effort, because sometimes it's really easier said than done, right? So one of the things I wanted to do is share a movie that I was watching today with a group of people who are part of the Carl Jung community, and this was a meeting that was propagated by one of the analytical groups, the Carl Jung analytical groups. This is a group of prestigious analysts who try to produce these classes, these sessions, so other people who are interested in these subject matters could join and learn more. And it was fascinating. This whole seminar was, the title was On the Path of Individuation with Elizabeth Pomes. Hopefully I'm saying her name correctly. Its last name is spelled Pomes, and the E has like a little line on top. And she apparently has, has certification from the International Association for Analytical Psychology, so she's quite well-versed. She's a professional. And she did such a great job in mediating that whole seminar where we were watching this movie called Central Station. It's a Brazilian movie, and it was it was a wonderful movie, I definitely thought, and I've never heard of it. Quite frankly, I normally watch shows and movies that are on Prime, Netflix, and these type of antique movies. It's not something that I'm aware of, and it was really nice to come across this, and I really enjoyed them going into every parts of the movie and breaking it down. So let me get right into it. So again, this movie was called Central Station. It was a Brazilian movie, and there are some quotes from the movie that Elizabeth Holmes shared with us, which I'd like to also share in this podcast. So let me get right into it. The first quote that I have here is, "The actual process of individuation, the conscious coming to terms with one's own inner center, psychic nucleus, or self generally begins with a wounding of the personality and suffering that accompanies it. This initial shock amounts to a sort of call, although it is not recognized as such." And this was a quote from Mary Louise Wonfran's Man and the Symbols. It was from the book, but so this quote is not something directly said in the movie. However, it is linked to the concept of individuation and when it happens and what its significance is. Again, the quote says, "The conscious coming to terms with one's own inner center, psychic nucleus, or self generally begins with a wounding of the personality and suffering that accompanies it." Well, so I think this is basically going back to the idea of, hey, we're born into this world and we come with certain factory settings, you could say, right? We absorb basically the culture, the religion that our parents follow, and we follow these things because this is all we know. And the actual individuation process is talking about, apart from that, who you actually are inside. And I think the idea kind of explores this notion of the psychic nucleus or self, that there is something innate inside you that is truly you, just buried under all these layers of what we've been told about who we are and who we should be versus who we actually are, and how that unfolding happens in the individuation process. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes we go through our lives in this very stuck place and we don't realize we're stuck. And because it's comfortable, it's a comfortable place to be in, and it's actually quite challenging to pull yourself out of your comfort and truly put yourself through risks, to trials and tribulations for you to come to that psychic nucleus. And I would say I've been in my own process of doing that, and sometimes I need a break from doing that work, but I hope to continue to do that work for the rest of my life, at least to try to get to my true authentic self. For those that are listening to this and it makes sense to you, that's great. And if it doesn't, it's okay. I hope that this sparks some curiosity in you and maybe allows you to look more into these concepts, and I really hope it does. Here's another quote. "A life lived in an authentically human way requires continual choices among various directions and different possibilities. This naturally includes the risk of detours and mistakes, not to mention losing one's way, but the acceptance of this risk is a necessary condition for the search for an individual path." And it looks like this is a quote from a book around the individuation in Jungian psychology. It's called the vertical labyrinth. And I remember Elizabeth actually mentioned this book. I'm quite curious about it. I really, really like that quote because I resonate with it a lot. And here is another one. The confrontation with the anima for a man and the animus for a woman in the sphere of analytical psychology is considered an essential task for anyone who wants to, or rather must, set out on the road to individuation. Love it. So this is also a quote from the vertical labyrinth, individuation in Jungian psychology. So basically, this is the concept of anima and animus. So anima for a man is the woman that a man attracts based on his own qualities, and the animus for women. There's this innate characteristics that a man and woman carry within each other. And it's like this reaction that occurs when these two opposites meet, and how it molds you and how it affects you and into how you navigate through the world. I think, in our realm, and this is something inevitably needs to happen in our life, where the people we meet shape who we are. But the more important thing is sometimes when we meet our anima or our animus, it truly does affect us, influences us, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. But I think it's all part of those lessons that we learn, those detours and those mistakes, those risks we have to take. Next. After having lavished its light upon the world, the sun withdraws its rays in order to illuminate itself. Carl Jung, The Stages of Life. Now, I think when I read these quotes, I may interpret them a certain way. Other people with their own worldviews, everybody's so unique with their perspectives, they may interpret another way. But I think this is essentially describing, especially the part, the sun withdraws its rays in order to illuminate itself. I think what this means to me is it's really important for you to be able to serve other people and take care of other people, is to take care of yourself. So even the sun, after having lavished its light upon the world, the sun withdraws its rays in order to illuminate itself. I agree. And now moving on to the next quote. In an experience of the sacred, there is separation from ordinary life and an opening to a transcendent reality. Emanating from the eternal realm, it touches the soul, thereby centering life. Well, there's so much depth in that quote that I can go into. I love it. So this is from, I believe this is a book called The Secret Garden, Temenos for Individuation. And I believe the name of the author for this book is M. Meredith. Next quote. The child is potential future. The child paves the way for a future change of personality. In the individuation process, it anticipates the figure that comes from the synthesis of conscious and unconscious elements in the personality. It is therefore a symbol which unites the opposites, a mediator, bringer of healing. That is one who makes whole. All right, so this is from a book, I think, written by Carl Jung himself, The Archetypes of the Collective Conscious. The Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious. Oh, I love this quote. I think this is kind of shining the light on the child archetype, the inner child that we all have within us, but also symbolizing, children in general are the potential future, of course, and child paves the way for a future change of personality. I mean, I see this especially within the dynamic of my family, my parents being immigrants, and me and my sibling bringing in new ideas into the home and exposing them to new things. And with that said, I'm going to end here. There's so much to talk about. And with around 20 seconds left on the clock, again, absolutely love it. Loving studying analytical psychology, and I would love to share more of my learnings and concepts. And for those listening, I hope you really enjoyed this chat, and talk to you soon.